Hey everyone, it's Victoria with Nutrition by Victoria. I have a Master's of Science degree in Human Nutrition and a Bachelor's of Science degree in Biology. And I'm here to educate you about your metabolism so that you can maximize it and get the results that you desire. Because everybody wants to be slim, lean, low body fat percentage, fit, and healthy on top of that all. But most people, if you're following trends right now, you are sacrificing your health in order to have some aesthetic goal or aesthetic gain. Or, you think what you're doing is good for both, but it's really not because the metabolism is very simple once you learn how it works. And it's very easy to get results like what I have aesthetically and health wise. I'm almost 38 years old. I've had 3 kids. I live a very, busy life that requires a lot of energy, a lot of presence, a lot of productivity. And I figured out how to support my body and then effortlessly maintain the aesthetic results that I have gotten from just following these simple steps. Okay. And the protocol is so simple. I just eat a high carbohydrate, low fat diet that is based on fruits, vegetables, starches, sugar to taste, salt added as needed, very, very basic. People, the cultures of people who have been eating like this are the ones who've had, the lowest disease risk. And they've also maintained a normal BMI. So, the reason why is because eating this way supports a high functioning metabolism. So we're going to get into talking about that today, but the meat of this video is that we are going to be analyzing Glucose Goddess's most recent What I Eat in a Day video that she did with Vogue. And so yeah, let's get right into it. So just for a little bit of backstory on Glucose Goddess, her name is Jessie in Chaspe. I probably butchered that, but I don't know French. And she is French. She is a biochemist by education. So I can't seem to find any more about like where she studied or anything. But she is like all the rage right now in terms of giving people diet advice on how to manage their blood sugar. So, what I want to say first, though, before we get into this, is that if you follow trends at all and you've been around for the last 3 decades, like I have, you'll notice that there has been this trend towards low carb eating, particularly over the last 2 decades. Okay. With the keto diet, the Atkins diet, the low carb, low calorie diet, like these all started coming about when I was in high school. So teenage, early 20s for myself is when I started taking notice of them. Like if you were to look up, how do I lose weight? Um, it used to be eat a low fat diet, eat a high fiber diet, like the Dean Ornish reversing heart disease program is based off of this. And this is the diet that, worked for people to lose weight and to get healthier. And then it shifted into this low carb way of eating because people will inevitably end up needing, pharmaceuticals and medical care, eating a diet that damages their metabolism. And I'm going to get into talking about that as we start to do this review. But it's also important to notice that over the last 20 years, rates of obesity, diabetes, heart disease, and cancer have exponentially went up as people started to fear carbohydrates. Okay. So is there a correlation between the two? You know, I'll leave that up for you to decide. Okay, so let's get into this video.
I'm going to show you everything I eat in a day for optimal energy, no more cravings, and helping your short term and long term health. So you're going to follow me throughout the entire day. And the Vogue team here.
Okay, let's get into the food.
What I order at a restaurant for lunch, how I handle the first.
Okay, so she's going to talk about everything. It's just the introduction to this video. I want to get her into breakfast. Okay, here we go.
Science shows us that if you eat sugar in the morning, you're going to have a big glucose spike, and then your entire day is going to be cravings and fatigue. So, what do you?
Okay. If you eat sugar in the morning, your entire day is going to be cravings and fatigue. Now, that is really relative to what it is that you're actually eating. For instance, I regularly track my blood sugar levels, and after I have a big meal of fruit and fruit juice in the morning or a smoothie, my blood sugar levels have completely come down to normal within an hour or two. So they're back to baseline and there is no big spike. Now, I don't use a continuous glucose monitor, so I'm not seeing like exactly what's happening there, but I will say that there is no hypoglycemia, there is no cravings. Fruit in particular for breakfast is very satisfying. Okay. Now, many people can run into the issue of not eating enough calories, and that's a different story. When you are eating fruit, because it is a low calorie density food, you got to make sure that you're eating enough. And that's why I generally will have like fruit juice first in the morning, and then I will have a big fruit meal generally after I do my exercise. So I have like the juice is like the pre-workout and then the big fruit meal as the post-workout. And I don't personally have any issues with fatigue or cravings through the rest of the day because I'm giving my body what it wants in the form of carbohydrate. So I just want to share here. Okay. In my coaching program here, I go over a lot of stuff. Okay. Right now it is currently on sale, and I'm leaving it on sale until the end of the month here. So that you guys can take advantage of this information. Okay. So it's important to note that before you start talking about glucose spikes and nutrition, anything related to that, okay, that the person who is educating you has a general understanding of the metabolism and how we generate energy, okay, because it all happens here in this Krebs cycle, okay. So we have um, multiple ways in which we can fuel this pathway. Okay, glycolysis, which is the breakdown of glucose, glycogenolysis, which is going to be the breakdown of glycogen into glucose. So that's our ability to store glucose. We have gluconeogenesis, which is the creation of glucose from non-carbohydrate substrates. It's predominantly going to be coming from amino acids in the first 48 hours that you are without, enough sugar. And then you got ketosis or ketogenesis, where you're going to be generating acetyl CoA predominantly from fatty acids in order to, have enough fuel to keep your body alive. Now, some people will argue here that there's no such thing as an essential carbohydrate, but what your body requires the most out of any nutrient that you put into it is glucose. In fact, if we don't take in enough glucose, we have the built-in biomechanics to create glucose from non-glucose substrates like amino acids and lactate, as well as fatty acids. Okay, so it's important to note that our body prefers to fuel this pathway with glucose that we consume in our diet. Okay. So, in the morning in particular, going back to this video here, Okay. It's important to note that when you don't eat something that contains carbohydrate in the morning, that your cortisol isn't going to come down because cortisol is elevated in the morning because your glycogen is running out. Okay. It gets you up and out of bed so that you will go find food. Okay. And if you don't find a carbohydrate concentrated food source, then your cortisol is going to stay elevated until you do. It won't come down until your body gets some carbohydrate to start resaturating your glycogen stores. Okay. And this is because your body doesn't want to run out of carbohydrate. Okay. It doesn't want to turn on gluconeogenesis. Gluconeogenesis gets turned on by cortisol. Okay. So that's like the next step if you completely run out of glycogen. And most people aren't filling up their glycogen enough to keep themselves out of gluconeogenesis. And gluconeogenesis is where the foundational disease development of diabetes and insulin resistance takes place. So let's see what she's going to have for breakfast.
You want to do, you start your day with protein. And if you're bored of eggs, you can have like Greek yogurt.
Now, the thing with protein is that, yes, we need protein in our diet, but if you consume a sufficient amount of calories every day coming from particularly carbohydrate sources, okay, they're going to come with the amount of protein that your body needs, the exact amount of protein that your body needs. In fact, I just looked into my own calorie intake and nutrient breakdown using Chronometer, and my protein intake came in at about 55 grams. Now, that is completely sufficient for me. It's a little over the RDA. The RDA of protein for women is 46 grams a day. I'm currently breastfeeding, so it's right on track to being a sufficient amount of protein for myself. My baby is also not exclusively breastfed, so my protein needs have come down a little bit from when he was exclusively breastfed. I believe protein requirements are about 70 grams, 60 to 70 grams. Mine have come down because he's eating, 3 meals a day now too. So the thing with protein is that if you are taking in a sufficient amount of protein, a high protein diet, right, where a higher percentage of your diet is coming from protein, and you're not fulfilling your dietary need for carbohydrate, you're going to be turning that protein into glucose. So just keep that in mind. And by doing so, by turning the protein into glucose, you're turning on gluconeogenesis. Gluconeogenesis is the foundation for insulin resistance. So just keep that in mind as we go through this video.
Yogurt, tofu, leftover meat, leftover fish from last night. Add some healthy fat. Here I'm going to put some feta.
Okay, now what she's proposing right now, a high fat, high protein breakfast is the starting material for insulin resistance. Okay, so just keep that in mind. I'm going to just share right here. It is now established that sugar tolerance, which is going to be insulin sensitivity, your ability to take sugar from your blood and put it in your cells efficiently using the minimum amount of insulin necessary. Okay. That is what insulin sensitivity is. If you're using too much insulin, you're going to be insulin resistant. If you're not using any insulin at all, your body's going to think that you're insulin resistant as well. You want to be efficient here. So you're using, the smallest amount of insulin possible to take your sugar out of your blood and put it into your cells, efficiency. Okay. We're not talking about something that's too slow or something that's too fat or too fast. Yeah. We're talking about something that works correctly, okay, where we're not leaving sugar in the blood, and then we're not also not putting any of that sugar into the cells because we're running glucagon and gluconeogenesis, right? So that would be where you're converting protein into glucose and that doesn't require insulin, okay? Or it's not going to trigger insulin to be released. So we need dietary carbohydrate in order to be insulin sensitive and to have a good sugar tolerance. But sugar tolerance is impaired by starvation, which turns on gluconeogenesis, or the taking of diets with a high content of fat, because fat impedes the ability for glucose to get out of the blood. Okay. Eating a diet that's high in fat is also going to slow digestion down. So, a high fat, high protein breakfast is going to really create a big lag time on your ability to uptake any carbohydrate from that meal if you are consuming carbohydrate with the meal. And then we want to just keep in mind here that the taking of diets containing excess of carbohydrate is what promotes, sugar tolerance, okay, or insulin sensitivity. So let's go back to her video here. So she is basically creating a diet or suggesting a diet that makes somebody insulin resistant. Now, when you're not taking in a lot of carbohydrate, it can appear on paper, like through labs, that your triglycerides are low, your fasting glucose is low, but that doesn't show how your body reacts to sugar, like your sugar tolerance. What I just showed you here, the dietetic factors influencing the glucose tolerance and the activity of insulin. This is by H.P. Hemsworth. He discovered the glucose tolerance test. The glucose tolerance test uses a 100% full sugar drink in the form of dextrose, generally mixed with water, and then they test your blood sugar levels after. So you get a fasting reading, and then they see with that test how your body responds to the sugar. Eating the diet that this woman suggests and follows herself is going to make you fail a glucose tolerance test, because you are impairing your sugar tolerance with this style of a diet. And the reason why is because there's not enough carbohydrate to keep your body out of gluconeogenesis. And gluconeogenesis is the foundation for creating insulin resistance in the body, the foundational metabolic situation for creating that.
And some butter. And why not some little cherry tomatoes? So having a savory breakfast in the morning is going to help you so much feel amazing. If your whole life you've been having cereal.
Okay. It's going to make you feel kind of full, but you're still going to be like, where's the sweet? Where's the carbohydrate? Because your cortisol level has not come down from this meal.
Cereal and orange juice, this is a game changer.
Okay, I don't think I can play the music on here. So she has a very low carb breakfast. And look, she's got some beautiful peaches over here. I don't know why she doesn't eat those.
This is my little breakfast table.
And what if I don't have time to eat breakfast?
Common question. If you literally have 90 seconds to get out the door,
grab some juice, grab some fast food, fruit. A lot of times I don't have time to make myself a meal and sit down and eat it. I am always on the go. I'm always cleaning something. I'm always taking care of children. I'm always doing something. So what I do is I just eat fruit. I eat fruit all day because it's fast food. And then at night I sit down and I eat a salad with some rice. And that's it. Very easy, very simple. With the fruit, you just have to go to the store and buy it, pick out fruit that is in season, so it's going to taste the best and have the best nutritional profile. And yeah, like, she is lucky that she can sit down and eat a breakfast meal. I mean, if you're running out the door, grab a smoothie, a juice, some fruit, you're good to go.
Favorite way to have a savory breakfast is to do Greek yogurt, tablespoon of almond butter or peanut butter. Make sure it's unsweetened, doesn't contain any extra.
Now, the dairy here is going to elevate your IGF-1, and we're going to get into talking about that how animal products act on our blood sugar coming up here after she gets past her lunch meal. And I just think that what she's recommending is literally the diet that makes people insulin resistant. This is the diet that has been promoted, a similar style diet. This is very low carb. It's been promoted over the last 2 decades, like I was saying. And this is the diet that is making people insulin resistant, that is fueling diabetes, that is fueling heart disease, that is fueling cancer development. Okay. Where people like keep their body in this like metabolically suppressed state where you're not eating enough to have like full-blown symptoms, but you're creating the foundation for them. So when you can no longer eat this way and you want to go binge out on pizza and wings and stuff, then you really pack on the pounds because your body has been programmed to do that. Okay, so once you can no longer follow this like low calorie, low carb, starvation style diet, because that's what it's been telling your body is, hey, there's not enough carbohydrates here. So when we start eating more food, we're going to store it. Like that's basic, human metabolism 101 is if you don't eat enough, you're going to store more food or more of your food as fat eventually. Okay. It's just how it works.
Oils or anything. That's a really easy way to get your protein and your fat and make sure that your glucose is set up to be steady.
Now, our human needs for protein and fat are very low. Protein, RDA for women is 46 grams a day. RDA for men is 56 grams a day. Fat is like 2% of your dietary intake of a sufficient calorie diet, which is going to be over 2,000 calories a day for women, over 2,500 calories a day for men. So if you take that into consideration, that people aren't eating too much or it's not that they need to eat more fat and protein, it's that people aren't eating enough carbohydrates. And when you're eating a diet that's high in protein and high in fat and you're eating carbohydrates too, then people run into these blood sugar problems. So she's proposing lower the carbs and eat more fat and protein in order to manage the symptoms, right? But she's not addressing the cause of the insulin resistance that is causing these spikes, right? It's due to the fact that people are eating a diet that's creating insulin resistance in the first place, okay? So you have to lower the fat and lower the protein back to sufficient levels and increase the carbohydrate in order to become insulin sensitive. And then you no longer have an issue with glucose spikes and worrying about your blood sugar whatsoever. And you can be slim, lean, fit, and healthy effortlessly, not thinking about it. And then you have the energy to get fit. You have the energy to do the exercise to help promote a higher level of VO2 max in your body that helps to burn more fat. So it's all like a building process. Like, are you creating a foundation for insulin resistance or are you creating a foundation for insulin sensitivity? Because, you have to pick one and you're going to get the results of building, the foundation that you are participating in, like habit wise. Okay.
For the whole day. And whatever time your breakfast is, whether it's at 7 a.m. or if your first meal of the day is at 2 p.m., the same rule always applies. Never have something sweet on an empty stomach, because when your stomach is empty, your body is super sensitive and anything you give it is going to arrive really quickly into your blood.
Okay, that is not true. If you have like a piece of fruit, you got fiber, you got water there, you got nutrients, you have food molecules that are going to buffer the glucose response. But even so, when you do a glucose tolerance test, they're checking to see how you manage a huge sugar hit, and you're fasted before you take this test, so you're having it on an empty stomach. If you can't pass a standard glucose tolerance test, then you have insulin resistance, and it's from a high fat, high protein diet and insufficient carbohydrate calorie intake.
And is coffee bad?
Is coffee bad? Let's talk about that at the coffee shop.
Oh.
Students with
Let's talk about it at the coffee shop. So We got an ad playing here for a moment. Yeah, coffee is a way to keep your cortisol, buzzing. Okay. So if you are taking in sufficient carbohydrates, you will not have a desire for caffeine. I have not used caffeine in probably at least 13 years, probably more than that. When you're taking in sufficient carbohydrate, you don't have a desire for caffeine. People who undereat carbohydrates go to the caffeine because they're low carb breakfast, they're high fat, high protein, low calorie breakfast. In her case, that's exactly what it was. Um, doesn't give her any energy. Okay. She didn't give her body anything that it needed in the morning. So now she's going to get the caffeine because her digestion's so slowed down. Now she's created that fatigue that she was saying that, oh, we'll eat this to avoid feeling having cravings and having fatigue, right? Instead, she ate a breakfast that created just that.
Come.
But you see, this is the standard right now, though. People don't look at coffee drinking and caffeine as a drug when in fact it is. If you can't give it to a child, then you shouldn't be consuming it yourself, okay? And coffee drinking, though, is very normalized in our society, but it's important to note that it is a drug and that it does raise cortisol. It does encourage belly fat gain for that reason. And it doesn't do you any favors in terms of becoming insulin sensitive.
Okay, guys, full disclosure, I'm completely addicted to coffee. I try to quit every 2 days, but I can't. It's just
Okay. Why do you think she can't quit drinking coffee? She knows it's bad for her. Otherwise, she wouldn't make this statement. She's saying this because she doesn't eat enough carbohydrates. So she needs the buzz from the coffee because you know how it works. Okay. You drink the coffee, it raises your cortisol, it makes you create more glucose with gluconeogenesis. Okay. To put that sugar into your blood to fuel your cells. That's exactly how this works. Okay. If when you are waking up in the morning and your cortisol level is high, that's because your body is shunting more glucose into your cells for energy production to help you go find food. It's the same in a fight or flight situation. When you have an adrenaline release, okay, cortisol is helping your body to put more sugar into your cells for ATP or energy production, okay? Very simple.
too good.
What is your coffee up?
Coffee's not it's not that it's good. She's just addicted because has a low energy intake.
There today?
My coffee order is flat whites with full fat dairy milk. And I hate the
Ooh, more fat. Like, why is she doing this to herself? So she's probably has this like severely impeded blood circulation. Her oxygen saturation level is going to be low. Her VO2 max is going to be low. This woman's fitness level is going to be, in general, very low. Her ability to, her metabolism, her metabolic rate is going to be low eating this way.
this idea that oat milk is good for you for some reason. Oat milk is just starch juice. It's like drinking a coffee with pasta milk.
Okay, what I will say about oat milk and rice milk and soy milk and almond milk, if you want to use them, is to pick the one that is lowest in fat content. Okay, I don't consume any like non-dairy milks. I just use water when I want to, you know, when I need to use it. My kids consume almond milk. They're not really a big fan of oat milk, so I kind of let them, whatever tastes good to you, and you want to have it, that works out great. But I myself, I don't consume it. I don't have a need to. I'm able to meet all my nutritional needs eating a predominantly fruit, vegetable, and rice-based diet. So yeah, that's just my take on that.
Or rice milk. It's a nightmare for your glucose levels. Now, if
But it's not That's not true though. Okay. I'm saying to choose the non-dairy milk that is the lowest in fat content because it's going to be better for your glucose levels. Okay. The problem when people have like big insulin spikes and blood sugar surges when they're consuming sugar is because of the fat in the diet, because of the low carbohydrate content of the diet. Again, if you're having sugar, okay, and you're eating this way and you're experiencing elevated blood sugar levels and insulin spikes, that is because you're insulin resistant.
If you want to have something that's not
So all she's doing here is telling people how to manage their insulin resistance with a low carb diet that created in the first place.
dairy, I recommend almond milk or coconut milk, unsweetened always. So check the back of the
Okay, let's see what else she has to say.
pastries. If you can't resist, it's always better to choose a savory pastry over a sweet one. If I have
Okay. Pastries, either option is high in fat. So if you're choosing the savory one that doesn't have the sugar in it, okay, then you're going to have less of a insulin spike because of the lack in sugar, okay? But it's not because you're insulin sensitive. It's very clear the way she's describing everything and the choices that she's making and suggesting is that we are putting a band-aid on a person who is insulin resistant, okay? And that's not what fixes a wound. Your body has to heal it. You can't just put a band-aid on somebody who's insulin resistant, by giving them a diet that is just going to further exacerbate the problem by just putting less sugar into the blood. Okay, that'll fix it temporarily until you no longer have any control over your blood sugar regulation, which is what happens when you're constantly in gluconeogenesis. Remember from my previous videos last week that metformin is used to shut off gluconeogenesis because that is where somebody lives when they have a damaged metabolism. So then you need a medication to fix it. So all she is really is a shill for pharmaceuticals at this point.
had to choose here,
Okay, so I'm gonna move forward into her lunch. And she talked about cravings, right? Why is she looking at the pastries? Because she didn't eat any carbs for breakfast. And so now she's got her coffee to help to blunt her appetite, right? Because coffee is an appetite suppressant. But then she's like, ooh, look at these pastries now because I didn't have any carbs with my lunch. And a pastry is a high carb, high fat bomb, whether you are choosing the savory one or the sweet one. So completely avoid those. And it's easy to do that when you have your carbohydrates at breakfast. And again, fruit is going to be the best option. Why? Because fruit contains fructose and glucose and fiber and water and nutrients, all aspects that help to manage your blood sugar levels and regulate them. So you're getting the carbohydrates that your body needs, but in a steady stream, in a way that it's getting into your cells, but in a like regulated way. Okay. The other thing too is about fructose and glucose is that glucose requires insulin, fructose does not. So then the fructose can bypass certain metabolic processes that are required to put glucose into the cell. Fructose gets in easier. So then you get that energy hit. You get that satiation because you're like, okay, I'm feeling energized. Now I'm feeling satisfied off of my meal because I've got all these sugars coming in. The fructose actually helps to rebuild glycogen really well. So these are things to just keep in mind. Okay. Okay. So we're going to go to her lunch.
I'm having lunch at a restaurant and I want to show you exactly how I pick what I'm going to eat. So the first thing I look at on the menu is the starters. I'm looking for a starter that is vegetable based.
Okay. I this is lunch and she still hasn't had any carbohydrates unless she got the pastry, which I'm not sure if she did. She probably did and then just didn't talk about it because, the cravings and the fatigue. So she had the coffee because of the fatigue, and then she got the pastry because of the cravings, right? So keep in mind she's trying to tell you guys, this works for that, but it doesn't. So now we're going for another low carb option. Vegetables are great, but it's too low carb, and her body is like screaming at her for carbohydrates right now.
Because vegetables contain fiber.
And fiber is good for you. It helps to regulate your blood sugar. You really don't want to like do a juice fast or do a water fast or not eat any fiber, because fiber helps to regulate your blood sugar and it improves insulin sensitivity.
And it's important to start your meals with fiber to protect.
So why doggone fruit then? Because fruit's a good source of fiber.
Your body against glucose spikes. And the reason being that fiber creates a sort of protective mesh in your intestine when you eat it first during a meal.
And that's true. That's again why you want to. She didn't have a lot of fiber at breakfast either. Did you guys notice that? It was like a full fat dairy yogurt. If she ate that, eggs and butter, where's the fiber?
And that protection stays in place and reduces the glucose spike of the rest of the meal. So always looking for veggies.
Okay, I mean, what she said there is true, but you want to have sufficient fiber at every meal, and having only 25 grams of fiber a day, which is the current, recommended amount, it's not enough. Okay, so if you want to be insulin sensitive, you need the carbs and you need to have sufficient fiber, probably closer to about 50 grams a day. So that's double what is currently recommended.
First. Then for my main, I'll choose whatever protein that I'm fancy.
Okay, low carb option.
That day, I think today I'm going to have some fish. And then, because I love carbs,
Oh, here we go. Remember she said that she was trying to get off the coffee, but she couldn't because she just loves coffee. Okay, that's because she doesn't eat enough carbs. And now it comes out, I love carbs. I wonder why. But she like hates them at the same time. You would have good insulin sensitivity, Jesse, if you ate a high carb, low fat diet.
Go to the side dishes and I pick some nice tasty carbs, maybe the mashed potatoes here that I will have after the veggies.
And the saddest thing about her mashed potatoes here is probably that they're loaded with butter.
And after the protein at the end of the meal to get.
It's also important to note that she's very young. I believe she's in her early 30s.
Get all the enjoyment from them, but reduce their glucose spike.
So by slowing down your digestion with fiber and protein, which the fiber is fine, but the protein is going to inevitably make your digestion slower. So then when you put the carbohydrates in that also contain, the butter fat, which is what, her mashed potatoes are going to have in them, because you can never order just like low fat mashed potatoes when you go out to a restaurant. It's always going to have, butter added to it. You're just slowing down your body's ability to absorb the carbohydrate that's in the meal, slowing it down so much that you're probably going to run into gluconeogenesis because your body can't uptake this carbohydrate now. So the idea is not to prevent your body from absorbing carbohydrate, because you need it again in order to produce energy. Okay, we're going to go into just looking at the metabolism again here. Okay, right? You need glucose. If you don't have enough glucose to fuel this cycle, you're going to be making it from protein. Okay, and in order to use fatty acids, which also get thrown into this cycle to create energy, you have to start it with pyruvate, because oxaloacetate gets formed from pyruvate. Glucose makes pyruvate. Pyruvate makes acetyl-CoA. It also makes oxaloacetate. Oxaloacetate has to run through the cycle in order to use the acetyl-CoA that comes also from fatty acids. Okay, so we slow this entire process down when we get into gluconeogenesis, because we're not able to produce enough glucose to keep oxaloacetate forming at the rate that it needs to in order to run this cycle efficiently. So when you don't have enough glucose, you slow your metabolism down. You increase fat storage when you slow down your metabolism, and it's easy to avoid when you just eat enough carbohydrate. Okay.
Oh my God. This is the worst way
She wants to eat that bread so bad.
to start my meal. If you start your meal with bread, bread being 100%.
Okay, that bread was whole grain bread. It's not going to have that bad of an impact on your blood sugar. But for her it will, because of the high fat diet that she's eating.
And starch, all that glucose in the starch is going to go straight to your bloodstream and create a big glucose spike.
The thing is it's probably, I mean, it will, but that's because the fat is in the way. So the more fat you have circulating in your blood, which when you eat a high fat meal, which she did for breakfast, right? That fat will stay in your bloodstream for about 12 hours. So when you throw the carbohydrates on top of that, then it impedes the ability for the sugars to get out of the blood because you have so much fat in the way. So like this is really like insulin resistance is a fat problem, is a dietary fat problem, not a dietary carbohydrate problem. And again, we're promoting gluconeogenesis if that sugar can't get into the cells.
You know what? I actually think there's a sort of conspiracy theory going on in restaurants, because if I was a restaurant owner and I wanted somebody to 90 minutes after they start eating really want to have something sweet, I would serve them bread first. Bread first, big spike.
No. Actually, it's been shown that when you carbohydrate load prior to dinner, having something sweet, having some bread, you eat less at a meal. And I see it with my kids all the time. They'll have bread and fruit and, other like sugary snacks, like a snack pack strawberry jello, which is gelatin free. They've been enjoying that a lot lately. They will eat less at dinner time, so they'll eat less of the higher fat options that might be there, because they carved up prior. So that is really the idea behind that, is that you eat the bread, it actually makes you eat less of your actual high fat meal. And like I used to do this all the time at restaurants, where I'd eat like all of the crackers and I'd eat all of the bread, and I'd like, my parents would be so upset with me because I wouldn't eat my dinner because I loaded up on all this like starch prior, and I'd have like a sugary drink to go with it or something. So it's not a conspiracy. The conspiracy with having dessert after dinner is you've skipped the bread, you ate a high fat, low carb dinner, a steak, chicken, something, and now you want something sweet after because you didn't eat enough carbohydrate. So you can really manage your appetite well when you eat a high carb diet. You will not crave high fat foods, junk foods, processed foods, whatever. You won't crave them when you eat enough carbohydrates. It's very simple, because you're satisfying your body's desire for energy. And that is what regulates our appetite the most.
Nice.
Leptin and ghrelin are predominantly regulated by our carbohydrate intake.
10 minutes later, crack.
Okay, let's see.
For a veggie starter, aren't tomatoes super sweet and high in sugar? The answer is yes. I mean, in the big.
Okay. Did she just say that tomatoes are high in sugar? They are by default a low sugar fruit. They are a non-sweet fruit, okay? If you think that eating tomatoes is problematic for your blood sugar, you have insulin resistance.
Family of vegetables, and I know tomatoes are a fruit. Thank you. So this order of veggies first, then proteins and fats, and
that is a lot of fish on her plate. I mean, that is probably, I mean, I can't really get a good view of it. And what's with having two like empty glasses in front of your meal here? But it looks like a huge hit of protein, like 60 grams. I mean, that looks like a huge pile of dead fish.
Then carbs is really easy to reproduce, but you should only do it when it's easy, not if you're having a sort of mixed meal or something that's complicated to spread out. And this evening, for example, for my friends, I'm going to
Okay. She does a lot of talking. I don't see her actually eating her food.
sugars, and that way you can eat all the stuff you love with less
Oh, she's gonna sell us her drug next. Hold on.
I've recently added to the beautiful family of hacks is to take a little anti-spike capsule before the meal of your day highest in carbs. These plants in anti-spike are the most powerful to help your glucose levels short-term.
So it's very common to see people right now like telling you that you're doing something wrong with your diet. Okay. Follow my protocol and take my supplements. Gary Breck is a good one with that, where he will like tell people everything that they're doing wrong, and, use big words, scientific words. And then you go to his website and it's literally just like, buy this, buy this, buy this, because all of this is wrong with you, right? So she's trying to tell people to follow a diet that's making them insulin resistant. And then when her diet isn't working for people because it's making them stay in gluconeogenesis all the time, and so they still have very poor blood sugar management, to take her supplement that she sells. Okay, let's see here. Next, oh yeah, she talks about she's going for a walk.
But I feel like they fail when they don't do it perfectly.
Okay, so right now she is suggesting to go for a walk after a meal, to help with the glucose spike, to help with the insulin spike. Um, uh, Exercise makes your body more insulin sensitive because it encourages your body to use sugar for energy production. So it provides an efficient mechanism for utilizing sugar that's in your blood. Okay. So I agree with that. Exercise is good in all forms, particularly after a meal. It can, reduce your blood sugar levels, because you are moving that sugar into your cells for energy generation. So the higher your metabolism is, the more efficiently you're going to do this naturally. And that's why I promote what I promote, because that's what it creates. Okay, so now she's walking to Vogue and she's going to criticize their snacks.
Dopamine is the pleasure molecule, but actually on the inside, dried fruit is just like a big sugar bomb.
Okay. Dried fruit is actually really good for your blood sugar because it still contains nutrients and fiber, and it's high in glucose. Okay. Like I said, if you're having big spikes after you consume something saturated in sugar, you have insulin resistance.
So it might taste good, but it'll make you tired in 1 hour.
I'm never tired after eating dried fruit, and I eat a lot of it. I eat like over a pound of dates a day, and I feel nothing but energy after I eat them because I'm insulin sensitive.
Rice cakes, confiture. Rice cakes sound healthy, lots of marketing telling you they're healthy. They're just starch, a big glucose bomb again. And here's
Rice cakes are a great snack. They're low in fat and it's just rice.
just more sugar. So sugar plus starch, big spike.
Okay, I have to show you guys something right now, because this woman, like, does she actually do any research? I have no idea, and I really don't believe that she does. Okay, so we are going to watch this little clip here from nutritionfacts.org. Dr. Greger talking about, what if you added blended berries in addition to the sugar, like a berry smoothie? So we're talking about, like she's talking about adding jelly to the rice cakes, right?
Now, what if you add blended berries in addition to the sugar, like a berry smoothie? Now, they have sugars of their own. In fact, in this experiment, an additional tablespoon of sugar's worth. So the blood sugar spike should be worse, right? No. Not only was there no additional blood sugar spike, here's the critical part. No hypoglycemic dip afterwards. Blood sugar just went up and down without that overshoot and without the surge of fat into our blood.
Now, the surge of fat into our blood happens when we become hypoglycemic. Okay. So that means that we've entered gluconeogenesis.
This difference was attributed to the semi-solid consistency of the berry meals, which may have decreased the rate of stomach emptying compared to just guzzling sugar water. In addition to soluble fiber in the berries has that kind of a gelling effect in the intestines that slows the release of sugars. To see if it was just the fiber, they repeated the experiment with berry juice that had all the sugar but none of the fiber. Now, as you can see, there's a kind of a clear difference observed early on in the blood sugar responses. At the 15-minute mark, the blood sugar spike was significantly reduced by the berry meals, but not by the juices. But the rest of the beneficial response, right, like at 90 minutes, were almost the same between the juice and the whole fruit, suggesting that fiber may just be part of it. It turns out there are fruit phytonutrients that inhibit the transportation of sugars through the intestinal wall into our bloodstream.
Okay. So this is just showing that when you are adding fruit in any form to a meal, it can blunt your blood sugar response. So he's also showed this if you add berries to your pancakes or berries to your cereal, that, you can take something that's high glycemic, like sugar, you know, um, uh, cereal, pancakes, bread, and you can blunt the blood sugar spike basically, and lower the insulin requirements just by adding fruit. So she's dogging a lot on fruit here, when in fact fruit is beneficial to managing that blood sugar response or blood sugar spike. Okay.
I mean, chocolate is not great for you. So I'll give this a pass because if you're eating chocolate, you know what it is and you're not being fooled by any marketing.
Okay, chocolate is also a very high fat option. And it contains a lot of caffeine as well. So, if you're craving chocolate, you're craving carbohydrate.
Fruit yogurts, oat milk. These may sound like they're good for you, but again, a lot of sugar, big glucose spikes. So all of these snacks are going to.
Okay, yogurt again is typically a dairy product, which is going to elevate your IGF-1, which is going to promote insulin resistance just in general, just based on the composition of the food, being an animal product.
Give you short-term dopamine, but on the inside, the glucose spikes they create.
Now, she's talking about dopamine here because when we consume carbohydrate, our body elicits dopamine, and that's partly due to the fact that we regulate our mood hormones, like serotonin, from carbohydrate intake. So for our body to tell us through its release of dopamine that something is good for us, then that's how it communicates. Okay, you can take that and say, well, what about drugs? Because I get a dopamine release from that. Well, we're talking about food here, okay? And in order for us, like before we could tell, nutritionally what a food was, we would base our eating off of the way that something tasted, the way that made us feel, whether it gave us energy or not. So that to say, that dopamine release is bad is not like beneficial to anyone, because depression is a huge issue in our society. And I can name like so many people that I know personally that take something to regulate their mood, and dopamine is a mood regulator. Okay, it leads to the production of other hormones that help to regulate our mood, our sleep cycle. So by consuming carbohydrates and eliciting that response, it is beneficial for making us happy and making us, cool with life, and not creating, a lot of anxiety and depression, which is in general linked to, low carb consumption. So people don't eat enough carbs, they don't produce enough serotonin, and then they are going for the stimulants to help to kind of like create that effect. And it's just like, and then drug use too, people are looking for that level of stimulation that they would be getting from food if they were just eating like a healthy diet. So, everything's correlated.
Are going to harm your physical and mental health, your energy, give you cravings, and hurt your brain.
So what do we do?
I will be back.
Okay, she just said that carbohydrates hurt our brain. Now, I think I missed where she's talking about glycation.
You know what it is, and you're not being fooled by any marketing. Fruit yogurts. Term dopamine, but on the inside, the glucose spikes they create are going to harm your physical and mental health, your energy, give you cravings, and hurt your brain.
So what do we do?
I will be back in 5 minutes.
Okay, there is a part in this video where she talks about carbohydrates and their being damaging to us. She just said they hurt our brain. So everything that she's talking about is insulin resistance, right? But she also brings up glycation, which this is something that I've been kind of posting about recently in some of my reels. If you followed me at Nutrition by Victoria on Instagram, you'll see some of my posts. But I just want to share that foods that are the highest in advanced glycation end products are meat, okay, especially red meat, certain cheeses, fried eggs, butter, cream cheese, margarine, mayonnaise, oils, and nuts. Fried foods and highly processed products also contain high levels. So everything that she is promoting in for somebody to eat to manage their blood sugar is high in these advanced glycation end products. Now, this is from the National Institute of Health. It says animal-derived foods that are high in fat and protein are generally AGE rich and prone to new AGE formation during cooking. In contrast, carbohydrate-rich foods such as fruits, vegetables, probably says whole grains. I'll click on the whole thing. Okay. So let's see where it was getting to with that. Modern diets are largely heat processed and as a result contain high levels of advanced glycation end products. So dietary advanced glycation end products are known to contribute to increased oxidant stress and inflammation, which are linked to the recent epidemics of diabetes and cardiovascular disease. And what we just learned was that the foods that are highest in AGEs are those that are high in fat and protein, so animal products, but also nuts and seeds. It says here that in contrast, carbohydrate-rich foods such as vegetables, fruits, whole grains, and milk contain relatively few AGEs even after cooking. So this is a high carbohydrate diet. High carbohydrate, low fat diet. In fact, Dr. Dean Ornish, when he wrote up his program for reversing heart disease, it included fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and fat-free dairy products. But he did recommend to use soy in the place of those. So, yeah, that's just something to keep in mind, that the entire diet that this woman is promoting insulin resistance and AGE formation, which is damaging to your entire system, as well as, promoting heart disease, diabetes, obesity, and cancer.
Okay, I did a little shop rice cakes. Then replace the nice sourdough bread instead of the rice cakes. Then,
okay, sourdough bread and rice cakes are going to have a similar glycemic index. So right now she's replacing foods that she found in this kitchen.
Replace the jam with unsweetened nut butter.
Now, um, jam or nut butter, from the studies that I've seen, because they contain plant products, right? The jam is made of fruit and the nut butter is made of nuts. They both contain antioxidants that are going to be protective against, free radical damage from big glucose spikes. But the jam in particular is going to be more beneficial because it's lower in AGEs. And then it also has those plant phytonutrients that we saw in Dr. Greger's video, talking about how it will aid in blunting a glucose spike from a high glycemic index food. So the jam's actually a better option.
I would definitely recommend changing this kind of chocolate for a simple, nice dark chocolate with.
So a dark chocolate, which is going to be a high fat option and also higher in caffeine. The more like chocolatey something is, being dark chocolate, it's going to have a higher theobromine and caffeine content.
Less sugar in it. And let's replace these little sweet yogurt sugar bombs with a simple Greek yogurt in which.
Now, dairy still contains a lot of lactose, which is going to translate to sugar in your blood. And, she's recommending the Greek yogurt that's high in fat. Again, insulin resistance promoting.
You can add some frozen berries and some more nut butter if you want. And then finally,
she must have a thing with like yogurt and nut butter and berries, because that's the second time she's suggested it, which you got a high fat, high sugar option. It's going to be insulin resistance promoting.
The dried fruit, bye-bye. We will replace them with apples, and to reduce the spike of the fruit, some nuts. And what?
Again, the nuts in the AGE formation, because most nuts have to be like heat processed in some kind of a way. Now, if this was my kitchen and my like cabinets, I would have the jam, the rice cakes, the apples, the dried fruit, and the bread would be part of like my diet. Okay. I wouldn't consume any of the other stuff. I would want the foods that contain the most carbohydrates, the most nutrients, and the lowest fat content. And then everything contains fiber for the most part too.
Voilà. Now we're gonna go shopping because I'm making.
Okay, so now we're gonna get into her dinner.
Veggie starters. It's a miso-based dressing spinach salad. It's the recipe of my cousin Arthur. It's unbelievable. Then baked salmon, baked sweet potatoes, and lots of chocolate for dessert because I love chocolate. But
oh my god, this is so funny. The chocolate thing is because she's under eating carbohydrates. So when you eat enough carbohydrates, you won't crave the chocolate. And then if you still like desire something dense, I recommend having dates. Dates are an amazing chocolate replacement. They are super loaded with carbohydrates, fiber, phytonutrients, and they're excellent for managing your blood sugar. So if you're coming to this video and you're like, oh, I have got, blood sugar imbalance, I'm diabetic, I'm insulin resistant, I have prediabetes, I'm overweight, whatever it is, what you can do is eat a diet that is high carb, low fat, and fruits, vegetables, starch based. Okay. You can add sugar to taste where you need it, but that kind of a diet is going to clear things up for you very well. And it's what all of the, plant-based doctors who advocate for insulin sensitivity promote, like Dr. Neil Barnard. He wrote the book Reversing Type 2 Diabetes, and he reversed type 2 diabetes with a high carb, low fat, plant-based diet in a clinical setting. So he did that. And then Dr. Dean Ornish's plan is used for reversing heart disease. It's all the same diet, high carb, low fat, low AGEs. It promotes insulin sensitivity. Again, just going back to what creates insulin sensitivity is a diet that contains an excess of carbohydrate and is low in fat, and you're avoiding calorie restriction. Okay. Sugar tolerance is impaired by starvation or the taking of diets with a high fat content, which is what she is promoting here.
said, Vogue, before you go, we got to talk about something. We got to talk about lactic acid reduces the glucose spike of carbs that you eat afterwards. So the hack is.
Okay, so now she's talking about using vinegar to reduce your glucose spike. Now, the thing about it is that this isn't like a something that you have to do, okay? Because you have acids in fruits that are going to have this same effect. And that's why fruit is so beneficial for managing blood sugar and regulating your blood sugar, because it contains fiber, water, nutrients, carbohydrates, everything that your body needs in order to be in this regulated state, this insulin sensitive state. Okay, so vinegar isn't just something like particularly magical. You can get the same effect from just having sufficient amount of fruit in your diet, using lemon juice, things like that. Okay, so the last thing I want to share here, because that video is done, Glucose Goddess is making people insulin resistant. She's just putting a band-aid on a bigger problem. So we're just going to talk or listen to this video briefly, just the intro, how to prevent blood sugar and triglyceride spikes after meals. This is from nutritionfacts.org.
Standard American meals rich in processed junk, meat, and dairy lead to exaggerated spikes in sugar and fat in the blood. This generates free radicals, and the oxidative stress triggers a biochemical cascade throughout our circulation, damaging proteins in our body, inducing inflammation.
And why is that? Because the foods that are being consumed are high in those advanced glycation end products, okay? And that is the diet that she is unfortunately promoting. Okay, so that is it for this video. I hope that you enjoyed it and have got something out of it. My message is always the same: a high carb, low fat, plant-based diet for the win if you want to be insulin sensitive. Okay, leave any comments or questions down below. Let me know what you'd like to see from me next, and I will see you guys next time. Take care and bye-bye. If you made it this far, also comment cherries, because I've been seeing them around and they're one of my favorite fruits, especially in the summer. Okay, bye guys.